right. Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our kickoff meeting for the State Coalitions for Science on the Ballot. This is sort of a way for us to mark jumping into some of the actual work for this program, but with the understanding that folks may join the process anytime throughout between now and the 2024 election. So some of you I see are coming in from states where you may just have one or two people signed up currently. That's totally okay. We still have plenty of time to recruit and support you and help it get additional members so that you aren't doing these lifts and doing this work completely on your own. We've certainly had people be successful in doing that in the past, but we also want to help set you up for as much success as possible and make sure that you have support with other folks in your state participating in your coalitions. So don't get discouraged if you feel like it may be a slow start. We built into our timeline a lot of extra time at the start so that we could help you get folks on board and get them engaged and interested in the work that this program will do over the next year and a half or so. So just kind of starting out as that I know I sent some emails out today, and there are some that right now are the only ones from their state. Totally okay. This is sort of on a rolling basis. This meeting will sort of mark the start of monthly meetings for our coalitions. So from here on out, we will schedule a time every month to be able to come together, share ideas, talk through problems, updates, milestones, as well as additional training about some tools and resources that may be helpful to you as the program sort of continues throughout the process. So we'll get into that in a little bit more detail in just a few minutes, but just something to sort of keep in mind that this will be the first of many opportunities to get together, not just with other folks in your coalition, but with coalition members from across the country to learn what's working, what maybe other folks need support with, and how NSPN can also provide some of that support. And so in addition to that, I know I've mentioned before, some of you may have heard that we will also have a part-time coordinator that will help with this program. We're working on that hiring process now. So that'll be somebody that you'll get to meet in the future. That will also be a good resource for you as we move through the program. So with that, let me pull up my screen so that you can see the slides that I'm sharing tonight. Hopefully all of you can see this now. So just a little bit of background. Again, I always start these meetings off with a reminder. Science on the Ballot was originally Science Debate. It used to be its own nonprofit. And this year, NSPN is sort of completely formally taking over the program, rebranding it as Science on the Ballot. And the goal is to get candidates for campaigns across the country to be able to share their stance on critical science and technology issues. So that's where the state coalitions come in. We know that buy-in from people on the ground in the states who are closest to the relevant issues at the state level and local level are the ones that are really going to be able to drive getting responses from these campaigns. And so 2024 is interesting in that we'll also have a presidential election. And so we will be working with you and with other partners and the public at large to develop a set of presidential questions for presidential candidates and try and get them to answer on the national scale. So 2024 will be a really exciting year for this program because we'll have not only the work that the state coalitions are doing, but what we can do at a national level with the presidential election as well. Also, I always like to share some goals. These are some of the things that we are, doing to provide not just the experience of the program itself, but hopefully be able to provide you all with working through the state coalition some training opportunities. Talking about how to work in a nonpartisan way. To work on, science and campaign communications, how to engage with local policymakers, candidates, and the public at large. And so not only does this program have its own sort of set of goals, but there's a lot that we hope that you as the coalition members and leaders will be able to gain some valuable skills and be able to continue doing this work, whether that's in your own research areas, with where you work or where you might volunteer in the future, so that we can continue to make sure that science and technology issues are being communicated and being talked about, especially in the context of elections. This is a broad timeline that I've shared before, so if you've watched the recordings or if you've come to any of the previous meetings, you kind of get a sense for where we are. We've been working, the past several months on getting folks to sign up and join our coalitions, and so we've got a good number of states represented, some with large teams already, some that are still just getting started with a few members, and then looking ahead. Developing questions will be sort of the next major thing that we'll work on together. When the questions are developed, then you'll be able to start actually doing the outreach to campaigns and candidates. And then at the very end, leading right into the elections in 2024, looking at doing outreach to media, voters, directly to get them to actually look and review and absorb the information that we've collected throughout this process. So to engage the media and the public at large on the work that you all have done. So that's sort of a broad look at it. I did break it down into sort of what the next couple of months will look like, basically now through the end of the year. And so this, all of these sort of milestones are also on our website. So that's a good place to check back and kind of see the order of things as it comes along. But between now and August, you'll have the chance to connect with members of your coalition, so other people in your state, make sure that you know who each other are, be able to start kind of figuring out what areas you want to focus on individually, and make sure that you kind of have an understanding of how to run your coalition and how we can support you, as well as it's a time to start kind of thinking about what are the big campaigns and elections that are coming up in your state that will be relevant in 2024. Are there, Senate seats? What are state-specific roles that might be up for election? What are local areas that might be worth looking at to make sure that they are all part of your plan to target? So between now and next month, that'll be a big area of focus, and we'll still be recruiting folks along the way. From August and September, that's when we'll get to the sort of start of the work of drafting questions themselves, and some of that will be identifying partner organizations to help with writing questions. We'll have a whole workshop around that, so I won't go too in depth on that now because that's something that we'll target a little bit later, but being able to get input from other organizations to help solidify your questions. So doing some early research to figure out what partner organizations you might want to reach out to, doing some of the early work of looking at past questions that have been asked throughout the program, whether that's in your state or other states, and starting to get a sense of what are the major topic areas that you want to be sure are covered in your set of questions. And then continuing the work of researching campaigns and candidates. From September to October, then, that's at the point where you'll start to have drafted questions. You'll start to have an initial list that you can submit to NSPN for feedback. We will take a look at questions, make sure that those nonpartisan ideals that we're going to talk about in a few minutes are in there, and just provide some perspective and assistance in helping round out those questions. What I've found this time period is it's a lot of help narrowing down questions. A lot of coalitions sometimes have maybe 15 or 20 questions, and we try to narrow it down to about 10. And so kind of help figuring out how you can prioritize those questions to make sure you're still hitting on all the relevant topics that you want. And then coalitions will also begin finalizing their list of campaigns and candidates in those campaigns that will need to be contacted. From October to November, that's NSPN will continue to provide feedback, sending that back to you, allowing you to revise those. That's also the time frame that we'll start to solicit suggestions for the presidential Q&A. And so we'll be reaching out to coalitions for help with that, as well as the public at large. And then you'll also sort of start to develop and finalize your list of campaigns and candidates that you're going to target for this cycle of Science on the Ballot. And then heading into the end of the year, November to December, your revised questions based on all the feedback from NSPN, from partner organizations, getting those really solidified. And then NSPN will also do the same with the presidential Q&A, being able to share out a draft of what those questions look like for additional thoughts and feedback. So that's just sort of an overview of what's to come over the next couple of months, and give you an idea of sort of the flow. Like I said, when it comes to partner organizations, when it comes to drafting questions, that sort of stuff, we will have some additional workshops so that those of you who are completely new, or those of you that have done this program before, will be able to have some additional support and insight into best practices and some other tools and resources that may be useful to you. Speaking of resources and training, a lot of things already on the website to help you out. There's links to some websites that will help you in doing your campaign research, figuring out who the candidates are in those campaigns, figuring out, going back and reviewing past materials. So, if you want to look at coalition building, again, you can look at that recording and those materials that are all live on the website now. And so there'll be additional resources as we continue throughout the program. We'll continue to update that with things that we share in these meetings. So I'll pause there and just see if anybody has any initial questions just based on timeline or sort of broad overview questions about the program at this point, if you haven't had a chance to ask those. Well, with that, I will jump into these nonpartisan guidelines. And, as a general rule, the point of these guidelines are tied to the fact that we are a nonprofit organization, and so we must remain nonpartisan. And so that, obviously is a very sort of tangible reason to do it. But I think there's some additional reasons to think about the importance of being nonpartisan in the way that we present ourselves, the way that we build questions, and the way that we're intentional about some of these steps that we'll go through. And one of those, I think, is to be able to get buy-in from folks, regardless of their political affiliation, their ideals, and to show that we really want to create a platform where people can talk about their ideas regardless of where they fall on the political spectrum. And so, in terms of engagement and participation in the program, being nonpartisan is one of the ways that we can continue to support that. And ultimately what it does is it provides us an opportunity to allow democracy to work out and voters to just have a clearer picture of where particular candidates fall on particular issues. And so it can be frustrating at times, I think, particularly in our current political climate, that, simply asking questions sometimes can feel politicized. And we want to get back into the mindset that we have our values as an organization. You have your values in terms of the, wanting to form the state coalitions that you have, but in general, NSPN as an organization believes in science and believes in the importance of being able to talk about science. And so, these questions are a way for us to live up to our values while still providing an open and transparent and democratic way of allowing campaigns and candidates to share their views on these really critical issues. And at the end of the day, ultimately, the goal is not just that we then have a repository of here's what all these candidates said, right? That's the first hurdle. But ultimately, we would be able to then have a larger conversation in our communities, in our states, across the country about these issues and make sure that they're things that voters are aware of and that voters are thinking about when they're making decisions about who to put into office. And so while we aren't, advocating for particular solutions or candidates or ballot measures, what we are doing is providing space to make sure that science and technology issues that we care about and that we know are important and that we know affect the public at large, whether or not they're super informed about them at this point, that people are talking about them. And the more that we do this program, the more that we invest time and energy into it, the more momentum it builds to be able to talk about these things regularly. And I just think that that's important for me to kind of reference at the start, that this can sometimes be, it's a long program. Election cycles can feel long, and it can also be frustrating at times when we, have so many different political ideas sometimes that can get in the way of real conversations. But doing this work ultimately leads to more people talking about these issues, being informed about these issues, and being invested in the potential ideas and solutions that candidates and campaigns might have about these issues. So that's sort of my spiel up front, and just sort of my experience, both in this program and a long career being involved in advocacy and working, sort of in policy worlds at the local and state level. So I just start off by describing, what is nonpartisan versus bipartisan. We hear both of these words thrown out a lot, but nonpartisan really means not expressing support for one political party or candidate over another, and more broadly, not promoting a particular political ideology. So it really is being not involved with any sort of particular political ideology. Bipartisan is two political ideologies working together. Nonpartisan is separating yourself from, expressly supporting one idea or candidate over another. And so it really is neutrality in the truest sense. That's not to say that we then can't talk about things that might be politically charged and that might cause, political actors to have strong reactions to them, because those are relevant issues that live up to our values. But the way in which we talk about them and ask about them will be important to maintain nonpartisanship. So these are, also just as an aside, all of these guidelines are linked on our website, so you can go back to this at any time. The recording and everything will also be online, so you'll be able to come back and dig into this, ask questions, all of that, at any time throughout the process. So don't hesitate to ask tonight, but also don't feel like this is the only time that you'll see this information. We'll just have to commit it to memory. There'll be lots of opportunities to review some of this. Some broad level things to think about when talking about nonpartisan engagement guidelines. The questions themselves that are shared with candidates, regardless of what level of office we're talking about. It doesn't matter if this is a mayor or a congressperson or a Senate seat or our presidential questions. They should follow these guidelines, and these should be sort of a guidepost to being able to create those. Ultimately, part of our due diligence will be to make sure that state coalitions submit their final questions to us so that we can review, comment, provide support and input into those before you start actually sending them off to potential candidates and campaigns. So we're here to support and provide that additional oversight and input to make sure that we're adhering to these guidelines. However, questions should call candidates' attentions to science and technology issues and help draw out their views in a way that would not happen without our group's efforts. There's a reason that this program exists. There's a reason we believe in it and are investing our time in it. And it's because these are things that candidates and campaigns may not talk about, and certainly may not talk about it in depth without our efforts. And so, again, that's to say that the questions that we create are really important because it may be the only time that these candidates talk about these issues in a meaningful way. Another component is that we obviously all have our perspectives, and that's the power of coalitions and having strength and multiple people participate, but you still may only represent a small portion of people in your state. And so being able to work with community groups, other organizations to get feedback, input on the questions is another really exciting and sort of unique aspect of this, that when we send questions to candidates, we're able to say, not only is it because of the folks in this program, but it's because of these other groups that have a vested interest in these issues, your other constituents that care about these issues, that had a say in creating them. So it's a really collaborative effort. And then, the nonprofits engaging with candidates can be a tricky subject. And so, to help ensure that the language and approach doesn't accidentally fall into favoring one candidate or another. Again, reviewing these guidelines, following these guidelines, and asking questions when you have them, all that will help make sure that we're doing things appropriately and meaningfully at the same time. So I broke this down into some of the different phases and aspects of the program, just to give you some examples of what to do, what to avoid to maintain that nonpartisanship. And so we'll go through these, but obviously there's still going to be some gray area. And that's where, our monthly meetings are a great chance to be able to pose that to a larger group. It's a great opportunity for you to reach out to me and the future program coordinator who will be helping with this program and ask for input, folks that have been through the program in the past to clarify. There are things that come up in elections every year that are things that we don't necessarily plan for. And so, we do our best to follow these guidelines and to make decisions based on these best practices, even if it's a totally unique situation. So when it comes to the candidate questions themselves, some things that we want you to do, and that should be part of the practice, is, like I mentioned earlier, coordinate with local organizations to help develop your questions, review questions. You will do it multiple times, but to make sure that you're removing any bias in the way that you're asking questions. Seek approval of your finalized questions before you actually start sharing them. So that's working with us to make sure that we've had a chance to look at them before you start using them. And one of the most important things is use the same questions for every candidate. That's different from using the same questions for every campaign. So you may have a campaign that's targeted on your state list that is for, a mayor or a city council person, or, there's some states that have really sort of strange state level roles, but that are really targeted to some science and technology issues. And that's not to say that you have to ask the people running for that office the same questions that you ask somebody running for US Senate, because their viewpoints are going to be really focused on different types of issues. What that does mean, though, is if you are targeting a particular race, a particular campaign, everybody who is running in that campaign should receive the same set of questions, so that you aren't asking a candidate from one political party a certain set of questions, running for the same office as a candidate from another political party and asking them a totally different set of questions. So there is flexibility in the question sets that you use, though we still kind of want to have some consistency. But the questions you ask somebody running for one particular office should be the same for everybody that's running in that race. And similarly, you don't want to leave anybody out. It doesn't matter if they are a really long shot, unaffiliated, or some political party you may have never even heard of. If we know that they're running in a race, they should get the same set of questions that people running for major parties are getting, and given the same opportunity to answer. For your questions, some things to avoid, and this is one of the hardest ones to do, that's why it's up front, but is to avoid using leading language in your questions. What that basically means is assuming intent. So for example, what actions will you take to address climate change assumes that the candidate intends to address climate change. And so that's a leading question that can show bias, it can assume intent. And so you can reword that question to talk about, here's maybe an example of what science is saying is happening with the climate that's relevant in our state. How can your position or your office help support the farmers that may be impacted by this change in climate in our state? It's more specific. It doesn't assume that they think it's the problem that we think it is, and it provides some context to the science itself to be able to get them to talk about these issues without making it seem like a partisan issue. Another thing not to do is to develop questions that are not focused primarily on science policy issues. Science policy obviously runs a large array of topics, but it can sometimes happen that something that really isn't related to science or technology policy might sneak in there as something that we want to ask, and we want to refrain from things that are sort of outside the scope of science on the ballot. The other thing to avoid is referring to specific legislation in your questions. That can very quickly become a partisan issue. It can make it seem like we're asking for a candidate to take a stance on a particular bill or piece of legislation that might be out there. And so that's something that we want to avoid. There's some, perhaps opportunity to talk about historical legislation, legislation that has been passed, and, kind of their interpretation of that, those sorts of things. But as a general rule, avoiding specific legislation, but expressly upcoming things that they may have a chance to vote on is something we should avoid in our questions. So for community building and outreach, we want you to collaborate with local community groups. We want you to be able to find other folks with different perspectives to help support building these questions and developing them. And we want to be a part of that process too at NSPN. We want to help you build your questions. We want to answer any questions that you have. We want to be able to provide feedback and support. So do involve us in the process. What you want to avoid is including any sort of bias or partisan language in your outreach to other communications. So, we're nonpartisan when engaging with campaigns, but we're also nonpartisan when we're dealing with other partner organizations. And we also want to be careful about the types of organizations that we choose. We want to look for things that are primarily other nonprofits that have a nonpartisan reputation, and that wouldn't be seen as, making us feel like we're not, partisan by proxy because we're, collaborating with other groups that have a strong partisan lean. When it comes to dealing with candidates themselves and inviting them to answer these questions and just communicating them in general, do please use the same question set for all candidates. We talked about that a little bit ago. Use the same language and neutrality in communicating with all campaigns. So, it's going to be the same sort of format and letters that you do. Send questions to campaigns at the same time and use the same deadline to receive answers. Obviously, would be very unfair if we gave somebody a week and we gave somebody else 2 months to be able to respond to questions. There are going to be some campaigns that are harder to reach, and they may have a shorter timeline as a result. But you can also look at it in terms of how long from the point that they receive the questions to when they're due as being your timeline. So if everybody gets 2 weeks with the questions to be able to respond, that's still setting the same deadline, even if you hear back from a campaign at 2 very different parts in the year. And then this is a big part that NSPN will play, but sharing and representing candidate responses equally. Obviously you don't want to bury somebody's responses and make it much harder to find than somebody else's in the same campaign. So being equitable there when it comes to how we share this information out. Some things to avoid, some things that you shouldn't do. Shouldn't create any talking points for candidates. In some cases, there may be people that running for office, right? And you should avoid, doing anything that makes it seem like you're feeding them responses. We cannot ask candidates to pledge support for a position on an issue if elected. That goes back into that partisanship and referencing specific legislation. And we shouldn't participate in follow-up activities with select candidates, right? So, if somebody responds to questions, shouldn't then show up at like a stump speech supporting them or, in your capacity in this role, seeming like you're amplifying one candidate over another. So those are some important things to remember there. So some other general things just to keep in mind and be wary of, though I think these are things that would only happen in very sort of extreme or specific circumstances. But, coalitions and members representing coalitions cannot, through working with NSPN, working this program, create talking points for a candidate in preparation of campaign appearances. It's a campaign contribution if you do that. And it could be, something that would hurt not only, your nonpartisanship, but potentially the candidate themselves. Asking candidates to pledge support on a position or an issue if elected, or to pledge to take specified actions during the campaign or when in office. That would indicate to the IRS that we are not a nonpartisan nonprofit, and could lead to some difficulties. And then again, participate in any follow-up activities with select candidates. So, again, being seen as being supporting or providing preference to a particular campaign or candidate would be seen as partisanship. I'll pause there again for any questions. I know that's a lot of information. I think a lot of this is fairly, based on intuition. And I think a lot of you could sort of logic your way through a lot of these do's and don'ts anyway. But it's just helpful to be able to walk through them together and make sure that these are coming across clearly. Like I said, there's certainly circumstances that may be in a gray area for some of these, and we will work through those with you. We will help you answer those and make sure that we're supporting you if there's something that doesn't, completely align to one of these guidelines that you may need support with. Right. So I was going to take some time and allow you all to meet other folks from your coalitions, but as I look through and see who's on the call, we have great representation. A lot of folks from different states are on the call. There's not a lot of groups that are together. So, I think these are just some good questions. You should have been introduced via email earlier today to other folks in your coalition. These are some great questions to have in your first call together, or just on an email chain if you don't know other folks in your coalition already. This could be a great sort of icebreaker for you all to think about when wanting to meet some other members of your coalition. I want to give us plenty of time to ask questions, but if anybody wants to hang on the call after to meet or discuss with anybody, I'm happy to do that. But the work of getting to know and starting to collaborate with the other folks in your coalition starts now. Don't wait for us to do any additional sort of prompts to get you all connected and working together. You now know who has at this point signed up to be in your state coalition. So use the emails that you have, reach out to them, figure out ways to connect, times to meet. If you need some support there, our coalition building workshop that we hosted last month has a lot of great resources in that, and that's on our website. So feel free to go back and review some of that information or reach out to me, and I'm happy to help facilitate things with coalitions one-on-one. But what we will do is new people sign up for coalitions. We will send an email introduction so that they have everybody's contact information and you have their contact information so they can pick up and join the work as well. And so I'm hoping that we can automate some of that process. If not, we'll do it manually as people fill out the form and join so that you all have the most up-to-date information about who has joined your coalition. And that's particularly important for those that maybe are currently on one-person coalitions. As people join, we'll make sure that they get connected with you and we'll help support you to get you, a good team ready to go and tackle some of these issues. I'll pause there for any questions, but, we'll obviously have these monthly meetings and these opportunities for additional workshops, things like that for all of the coalitions to get together. But you'll need more time outside of that. You'll need time to work with the other folks in your state to develop your questions, target your campaigns, and start thinking about that. So now that you have that information, start connecting with people, start having those conversations, and relying on the support of a coalition, and not just waiting for prompts for us. There's plenty to start digging through on the website and to start thinking about for your coalitions to have some tasks that you can start delegating and thinking through. I'll move into Q&A just about anything related to either the engagement guidelines, next steps, or general questions about the program, if anybody has anything. Like I said, this recording will be online in a couple of days, so you can come back and reference it at any point. I'm also going to drop the link to our website, to Science on the Ballot, in the chat, since this has a lot of other resources that would be super helpful for you to start reviewing if you haven't already. If you missed an earlier training, or if you just want links to some other things to start thinking about researching your campaigns, there's a lot of great stuff there. Our next meeting is scheduled for mid-August. I'll send out some reminders about that as we get closer to that. That will be an opportunity to talk about thinking about other partner organizations to help review your questions, as well as some info on best practices in reviewing questions. So look forward to that. In the meantime, connect with other members of your coalition. If you still need help recruiting folks, reach out to me. I'm happy to help provide some resources to help build your coalitions up a little bit more so we recruit some more people. Otherwise, start thinking about what campaigns you want to make sure are targeted. That work can sometimes take a little bit more than people expect. And so developing your list of who you want to do outreach to can really help expedite things in the future. So you can start thinking about that, start thinking about your question topics, but we're here if you need us. So feel free to email me at any time, and I'd be happy to meet one-on-one or provide more resources that way. But appreciate everybody joining tonight, and looking forward to seeing you all very soon.